introduced the narrator and the seemingly invincible villain, a charismatic flight instructor everyone calls Badass Pilot. At first, he seems untouchable. He runs a flight school, has wealthy backers, and even works with the but under the surface, he's hiding a dark secret. What starts as professional rivalry explodes into a high-stakes mission to expose a predator. The narrator risks everything to bring him down, and when the final domino falls, it's a revenge story for the ages. There's always one. The guy who seems to have it all figured out. At our local airport, that guy was Badass Pilot. He was the kind of instructor who could make you feel like you were learning from a legend. Leather jacket, designer shades, always pulling up in a luxury car half the time, with some starry-eyed student or wealthy exec tagging along. He wasn't just an FI examiner. He was a king in his little aviation kingdom. He had backing too. Rumor was he worked for a billionaire with a private jet, and he was best friends with some big-shot car dealership owner who raced Ferraris on the weekends. The man could fly anything with wings, and if you believe the hype, he had a golden touch in the cockpit. I wasn't exactly friends with him. More like I worked around him. We shared the same flight school space. I was trying to build ours, doing ground instruction, working on advanced ratings, and helping newer students. That's how I started noticing the cracks. At first, it was small stuff. He was constantly texting during lessons. Students would roll their eyes and joke about it. "Oh, Badass Pilot is just flirting with his fan club again," one of them said. Another told me she switched instructors because he wouldn't look up from his phone while they were flying. That made my stomach turn. And yet, he still had this unshakable aura. His students passed check rides faster. His schedule stayed full. He threw great parties, always had connections for new gear, and people lined up just to say they trained with him. But underneath all that charm, I started to feel something wasn't quite right. One day, I caught a glimpse of a message on his iPad when he left it on the front desk, some pretty racy content, not something you'd expect in a professional setting. He laughed it off. I didn't. It wasn't just about being distracted. It was how casual he was about it, like rules didn't apply to him, like he was untouchable. I didn't say anything at first. After all, who was I? Just another instructor trying to make it. But something kept nagging at me. Something darker behind that confident smile. He wasn't just careless. He was reckless. And reckless doesn't belong in the cockpit. That's when I started paying closer attention. And the more I saw, the more I realized this wasn't just about being unprofessional. This was about power. Abuse of power. And a man hiding something far uglier behind his aviator shades. The opportunity came out of nowhere. One quiet afternoon, Badass Pilot left the flight school in a hurry. Said he had a meeting across town. In his rush, he left his desktop unlocked, email wide open, text messages sensed, everything. And I was already sitting behind his desk, prepping paperwork. At first, I didn't even mean to snoop. I saw a notification pop up, a message preview, and curiosity got the better of me. But what I found, it was like opening Pandora's box with both hands. His inbox was cluttered with messages, but the real jackpot was in his messaging app. Hundreds, no, thousands of texts, sexts, photos, videos, some of them sent just hours earlier. And it wasn't just flirty exchanges. It was full-on cybersex with multiple women, students, strangers, colleagues. Videos of him doing things I wish I could unsee. Unsolicited dick pics. Screenshots of conversations pressuring women, many of them young and clearly under his authority, for favors. It wasn't just sleazy. It was abusive. And some of these women? They were clearly linked to the flight school. Names I recognized. People I'd seen around. People who trusted him to help build their careers. I realized what the students had been feeling all along. This wasn't about distraction. This was about manipulation. Exploitation. This man was a predator, hiding in plain sight with a headset and a clipboard. That's when the switch flipped in my head. This wasn't just something I could shake off. If I didn't do something, I'd be just another person turning a blind eye. So I pulled out my phone and started recording, screen after screen. Videos, images, messages, I got everything. I took pictures of the worst conversations, recorded videos playing on his desktop, screenshotted message threads that would make your skin crawl. I even started a spreadsheet on my phone, cross-referencing names and numbers so I could figure out who these women were. Each new discovery hit me like a gut punch. There was one student he tested the same week he sent her a sex video. Another who clearly said she felt uncomfortable, and he laughed it off with a winking emoji. This wasn't isolated. It was a pattern, a lifestyle. He'd built his whole career around getting away with it. Then I heard the front door open. My heart jumped straight into my throat. Someone was back. I didn't know who, but it didn't matter. I had maybe 10 seconds. I minimized the windows, yanked my phone off the desk, and tried to act casual. I stood up, mumbled something about needing to grab lunch, and walked out without looking back. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking, heart pounding. I didn't breathe easy until I pulled out onto the street. I had the evidence. I had the truth. But now I had a bigger problem. What the hell was I going to do with it? I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to another aviator someone badass pilot had burned before. Let's call him Mike. He wasn't just competent. He was meticulous. We met up late one evening in a quiet hangar, away from the main school. I showed him everything. His reaction? Disgust, disbelief, and then resolve. We got to work like detectives on a mission. We combed through the screenshots and videos, cataloging every phone number, every name, every interaction. I'd already started a spreadsheet, but Mike elevated it. He pulled out his laptop, added columns, and began researching every contact. Known aviation or non-aviation became our classification system. We identified students, instructors, and even a couple of FIA-connected names. One of the worst realizations came when we matched a message thread to a student who had recently passed her check ride with badass pilot. He hadn't just been unprofessional. He had tested someone he was sexually involved with. That alone could have gotten someone killed. Think about it. What if she wasn't ready to fly? What if he felt pressured to pass her so she wouldn't speak out? That's not just a breach of ethics. It's a direct threat to public safety. We dove deeper. Some women had resisted him. Some gave in, maybe feeling like they had no choice. Some we couldn't confirm, but their presence in his messages was suspicious. The common thread? They were all under his influence in some way. Students, applicants, women trying to build their careers. This wasn't just about sex. It was about control. Badass Pilot had built a whole operation on trust students, trusted him to evaluate their skills. Instructors trusted him to represent the profession, and the FA trusted him to uphold their standards. And he violated all of it. As we pieced the story together, Mike and I kept returning to one haunting thought. None of these women felt safe enough to report him. Some probably didn't even realize what he was doing was reportable. Others, we guessed, had tried and been shut down or silenced. That was the real kicker, the power imbalance. Badass Pilot wasn't just any instructor. He was the gatekeeper. He decided who passed, who failed, and who moved forward. If you pissed him off, you risked your entire career. Word travels fast in aviation, and reputations are everything. Mike and I looked at each other across the glow of our laptops and spreadsheets, the gravity of it all hanging heavy in the air. This wasn't going to be a simple fix. It wasn't just about exposing one man. It was about challenging an entire culture that protected him. We had the evidence. We knew what had to be done. Now the only question was, how do we do it without ending our own careers in the process? With the evidence in hand, Mike and I did what we thought was the right thing. We compiled a package burner email, fake name, no digital trail. Inside was everything: screenshots, videos, timelines, cross-referenced data, and a concise explanation of why Badass Pilot was a danger to aviation. We included copies of messages where he pressured women, proof that he had sexual contact with at least one student he tested, and even photos of explicit content he sent while actively conducting instruction. We didn't hold back. If the FA looked at it with even half an ounce of integrity, Badass Pilot would be done. We mailed it to the FI office he reported to, carefully labeled and tracked but anonymously. We couldn't take the risk of going public. Not yet. In this industry, if someone with power wants to crush you, they can and will. So we waited, and nothing. No statement, no investigation, no suspension. It was like we'd thrown a brick into a black hole. It hit us like a gut punch. After everything we'd seen, everything we'd risked, the FA didn't care? Or worse, they protected him. We didn't want to believe it, but we were starting to understand how someone like Badass Pilot could get away with this for so long. He wasn't just an instructor, he was part of the boys' club. The system worked for him, not for the women he harassed, not for the students he endangered, and definitely not for whistleblowers like us. So we regrouped. If the FOD wouldn't act based on anonymous evidence, maybe they'd listen to a direct witness. That's when we turned to someone we de-identified in the messages, a woman we'll all call young female pilot. She'd clearly tried to push back on Badass Pilot. Her messages were firm. She said no. She told him to stop. We figured if anyone might be willing to speak out, it was her. We reached out carefully, through a mutual connection, on a phone that wasn't ours. She listened. She didn't hang up. But when we asked if she'd consider reporting what happened to the FA directly, her answer was clear. No way. It'll destroy me. She wasn't being paranoid. She was being realistic. She told us how Badass Pilot already called her crazy to people at the school, how he spun every story to make himself the victim, how he could get the local police involved, or worse, reach out to FA contacts to blacklist her. She'd invested tens of thousands into her training, taken out loans, moved cities to chase her dream. And one angry man could end all of that with a few well-placed lies. And honestly, I believed her. That's when it truly hit us. This system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed to protect the powerful, silence the vulnerable, and ignore the inconvenient. We hung up the call and sat in silence. The FA had ignored us. Victims were too scared to speak up. And Badass Pilot? Still out there. Still flying, still charming his next student. We weren't just fighting one man anymore. We were fighting a whole damn culture. By the time summer rolled around, I was living with this secret like it was a second job. Every day I showed up at the airport, smiled, played the part, all knowing what kind of monster was walking around like nothing had happened. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One morning, I was in the flight school's lobby, scrolling through training materials on an iPad. It was quiet. Girlfriend 2 was behind the front desk, tapping away on her phone. She and Badass Pilot had a rocky, on-again, off-again thing. But at this point, I thought it was over, until his messages started popping up on the iPad I was using. Turns out, Badass Pilot had synced his account to the flight school's devices and forgot to unsync it. But that wasn't the jaw-dropper. Just above their convo, I saw his most recent chat with someone else, a student, from the night before. He'd sent her a video, not just flirty or suggestive. It was a full-on explicit video of him doing things I won't describe. Sent just hours before he climbed into the cockpit the next morning. I froze. Then I took pictures, screenshots, everything I could get. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I stood up, walked over to girlfriend 2, and without saying much, handed her the iPad. I didn't even explain. I left the sexting thread wide open for her to read, full screen, no filters. She looked down, and I walked right out the door. I didn't even go far. I sat in my car in the parking lot and waited. 10 minutes later, she came storming out of the building, iPad in hand, and peeled out of the lot. I knew exactly where she was going. Home. To the house she owned. The house where Badass Pilot had been living rent-free. By that evening, the fallout had already begun. She kicked him out, no hesitation, packed his stuff, locked the doors, and banned him from the property. For good. And just like that, Badass Pilot, the top dog, the golden boy, was homeless. But it got better. Turns out, Girlfriend 2 wasn't just furious. She was scared. She had a child. And Badass Pilot had been using that kid to arrange his hookups, setting up playdates with other single moms so he could sleep with them while the kids were distracted. She didn't just break up with him, she threatened him. Told him to see a therapist or she'd report everything to the police. And she meant it. What followed was a steep, messy decline. Badass Pilot moved into the flight school literally. Slept on a cot in the back office. Started drinking heavily. Looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Rumpled clothes, greasy hair, glassy eyes. He went from untouchable to unrecognizable in a matter of weeks. And the best part? Everyone saw it. Every instructor, every student, every hanger-on. They watched the king crash and burn in real time. And none of them knew I'd lit the match. For the first time, I didn't just feel like I had power. I felt like I had justice. And I wasn't done yet. After Girlfriend 2 kicked Badass Pilot to the curb, I expected him to disappear for a while, maybe move to another town, try to start fresh. But nope. He doubled down. He cleaned up just enough to fake a comeback. Started flying again, resumed instruction, and most disturbingly picked up where he left off with a new student who quickly became Girlfriend 3. Another young woman. Another person in his orbit he could manipulate. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Girlfriend 2 had taken the first big swing by throwing him out. But she still didn't know the full scope of what he'd been doing. So I kept feeding her information anonymously, of course. Screenshots, chat logs, snippets of conversations between Badass Pilot and other women, just in case she started having second thoughts about taking him back. She never replied, but I knew she was getting the messages. Every few days, I'd hear a new piece of gossip that let me know my little data drops were having an effect. I wanted her to stay angry, to stay aware. And most of all, I wanted her safe. Meanwhile, Mike and I were still pushing behind the scenes. We started recruiting others quietly. A couple of instructors. A few students. Even a local mechanic who'd had his own beef with Badass Pilot. We asked them to write letters to the nothing dramatic, just enough to pile on pressure. Anonymous tips, concerns about his behavior. Some referenced the harassment. Others pointed to the fact that he was testing students he'd slept with. We didn't want one big bomb. We wanted death by 1,000 paper cuts. And slowly, we started seeing cracks. But Badass Pilot wasn't going down without a fight. He knew someone had told Girlfriend 2 everything, and he guessed rightly that someone was pushing the FA to look closer, so he flipped the narrative. He told everyone that she was the unstable one, that she was jealous, that she was bitter about the breakup and trying to destroy his life with fake allegations, that she was the one sending anonymous letters to the hey because she couldn't handle rejection. It was textbook manipulation. And sadly, some people bought it. He got his instructors to take sides. He started spreading rumors that Girlfriend 2 had a drinking problem, that she harassed him, that she was stalking him. He even filed a police report claiming she was dangerous. Pure fiction, but when you say something loud enough and often enough, people start to believe it. And while all that was happening, He was working his magic on Girlfriend 3. She'd never met Girlfriend 2, but you'd think they were mortal enemies based on how she talked. Badass Pilot fed her a steady diet of lies. That Girlfriend 2 was crazy, vindictive, obsessed with him. That he was the victim, and Girlfriend 3 ate it up. She started defending him on social media. She posted glowing reviews about the flight school. She even started warning students not to talk to Girlfriend 2. It was disgusting to watch, but it told me one important thing. Badass Pilot was scared. He wasn't just defending himself, he was scrambling, trying to control the narrative, trying to protect the little empire he'd built on charm, lies, and intimidation. But it was already too late. The letters were piling up. The stories were spreading. The mask was slipping. And all I had to do was keep feeding the flames. At some point, quietly collecting evidence and sending anonymous tips just wasn't enough. Badass Pilot had weathered every whisper, dodged every report. The FIO was dragging its feet, and his flight school was still thriving. We needed something louder, something public, something that couldn't be ignored. That's when young female pilot and I decided to reach out to the one person who had the motive, the proof, and the guts to say something. Girlfriend 2. She'd been burned harder than anyone, but she wasn't in aviation full-time. She had her own business, her own money, and most importantly, nothing to lose from the FIA. So we approached her through a safe channel and had young female pilot using someone else's number make the call. It was a risky play. She didn't know who was on the other end, didn't recognize the voice, and had no reason to trust us. But when young female pilot told her that women were still being manipulated, that students were still sleeping with Badass Pilot, and that nothing had been done about it, she got quiet. Then she said 6 words that sent a chill down my spine. "Okay, I'll post the review tonight." And oh boy, she did not hold back. It was raw. It was honest. It was detailed. She posted it on Yelp, complete with carefully worded facts. No exaggeration, no speculation. Just the truth. She didn't name names, but it was clear who she was talking about. She laid it all out. The sexting, the videos, the manipulation of female students, the abuse of power, the drinking, the sleeping in the school, the inappropriate use of her child to arrange hookups. It was damning. And the internet did what the FA wouldn't eat listened. Within hours, the review started spreading. Other students forwarded it to their friends. Instructors screenshot it and passed it around in group chats. Someone posted it in a private pilot's forum, and it went viral. It wasn't just a review anymore. It was a warning. Badass Pilot became synonymous with predator. And predictably, he lost his damn mind. First, he tried to get the review taken down. Claimed it was fake, defamatory, posted by a competing flight school. Yelp held strong for a day or two, but eventually, under pressure, they removed it. But the damage was already done. He went into full panic mode, called his police buddies, and filed a harassment complaint against Girlfriend 2. Told them she was stalking him, spreading lies, trying to ruin his business. He even tried to get a restraining order pure theater. He rallied every favor he had. Local cops started randomly showing up at her business. She got hit with anonymous hate mail, fake negative reviews, even threats. But she didn't back down. And I'll say this, Girlfriend 2 is a stone-cold badass. She never deleted anything. Never folded. She just stopped responding, kept doing her job, and let the circus burn around her. Meanwhile, Badass Pilot was spiraling. He called a mandatory staff meeting and told instructors they were not allowed to talk to Girlfriend 2 at all. Anyone who stayed friends with her would be fired. One instructor, who used to be close to her, was sent to negotiate and convince her to take down the post. She refused. Girlfriend 3, meanwhile, went into PR overdrive. She left glowing reviews on every platform, flooded the Yelp page with 5 stars, and called out jealous haters in the comments. It was all so transparent, it made your skin crawl. But none of it could stop what was coming. You see, even if the review disappeared from Yelp, it had already been saved, shared, and screenshotted 100 times. People were emailing it. Whisper networks across aviation schools were lighting up. Instructors who had once idolized Badass Pilot started distancing themselves. He couldn't scrub it from the internet, and he couldn't hide from the truth. His empire was bleeding out, and the wolves were circling. You can only outrun the truth for so long. After months of anonymous letters, underground chatter, and that now infamous Yelp review, the FA finally stopped pretending they couldn't hear the noise. Too many red flags, too many whispers somebody somewhere must have realized their silence was becoming a liability. Because one day, it happened. Badass Pilot got the call. From what I gathered through the grapevine, it wasn't a polite heads up. It was an order. The FA Joe Jiuzhou, a formal investigation into his conduct. And not just about the review. They had a list names, dates, accusations, screenshots. Someone on the inside had clearly taken the time to organize it all. Suddenly, the man who once strutted around like a king was spending every waking hour trying to cover his tracks. He brought in a lawyer. He started holding closed-door meetings. He even tried to coach his instructors on what to say, in case the FA asks questions. It was too late. The investigators started interviewing people. Quietly, discreetly, but thoroughly. One of the instructors told me later that they came in under the radar. No uniforms, no big announcements. Just one-on-one conversations. And every person they spoke to gave them the same story, over and over. Badass Pilot wasn't just careless. He was dangerous. He'd tested students he'd had sexual contact with. He'd used his role to manipulate young women. He'd created a toxic, hostile environment where people felt afraid to speak up. And worst of all, he showed no remorse because in his mind, he was still the victim. When the FA dropped the hammer, it was brutal. First, they stripped him of all examiner privileges. Every certification, every authority he had to evaluate students. Gone. Just like that. He could no longer conduct check rides. Not for private pilots, not for commercial, not for instrument. Nothing. But they didn't stop there. His flight school also had an FAA-approved Ritterdon testing center, one of the things that brought in serious money. That was shut down permanently. And it wasn't just a pause or suspension. It was revoked, closed, done. Then came the final blow. The FA issued a formal ban. Badass Pilot could no longer be affiliated with the FA in any way, shape, or form. That meant no hosting FI seminars, no participation in advisory committees, no signing off on training materials, no involvement in regulatory events. He was blacklisted, professionally erased. In the world of aviation, where reputations are currency, this was a death sentence. Word spread like wildfire. You didn't even have to be part of our local scene to hear about it. Aviation Facebook groups, Reddit threads, pilot forums, they were all buzzing. Did you hear about the examiner who got canned for sexting students? Yeah, the FA finally nailed the guy. About time. And while he tried to play it cool telling new students that he voluntarily stepped down because of liability costs, everyone who mattered knew the truth. He didn't step down. He got dragged out. There was no press release, no public shaming, no courtroom drama. Just a slow, crushing administrative process that stripped away everything he built until there was nothing left but denial and a crumbling reputation. For the FAEQUE, no headlines, no lawsuits, no lawsuits, no lawsuits. Just another predator quietly removed from the system. For us, the people who watched, who documented, who pushed behind the scenes, it was vindication. We didn't need to dance on his grave. We just needed him gone. And now he was. Even after the FI slammed the door on him, Badass Pilot didn't disappear. He did what narcissists always do, rebranded the fallout as a noble sacrifice. To his students, he told a different story. I stepped away from being an examiner, he'd say, sipping his coffee like it didn't taste like defeat. Liability insurance got too high. Not worth the hassle anymore? And surprisingly, some people believed him. Or maybe they just wanted to. After all, it's easier to believe the lie than to face the ugly truth about someone you trusted. He kept the flight school running barely. He leaned on girlfriend 3 for support, who now seemed more like a business partner than anything else. She kept posting positive reviews online, defending him like a full-time job, trying to plug the holes in a ship that was already halfway underwater. But the cracks were everywhere. Fewer students were signing up. Instructors quietly drifted to other schools. Those who stayed avoided the back office, avoided asking questions. The buzz around the airport was different now, less admiration, more awkward silence. People weren't praising him anymore. They were watching him. And me? I kept my head down. I still came to the airport, still taught, still flew. But now, I moved through the space with a quiet kind of satisfaction. I'd walk past him and hear him tell a new student, "Yeah, I used to be an FA examiner." And I'd smile because I knew the real reason why he wasn't anymore. Sometimes people would vent to me about him. I'd listen, nod, never say too much. If they were safe, I might drop a hint. But mostly, I stayed in the background, a ghost with a front row seat to his unraveling. And I liked it that way. I didn't need applause. I didn't need credit. I just needed to know that the monster was finally out of the pilot's seat. Every time he tried to puff up his chest and pretend none of it happened, I felt that same little flicker of satisfaction. Because deep down, he knew. Every time someone side-eyed him, every time a student asked about the rumors, every time he stumbled over his excuses, he knew he was done. And I was still here. The narrator reflects on justice served not by a system, but by persistence, anonymity, and collective action. Though Badass Pilot is still flying, his empire is crumbling from within. Girlfriend 3 is standing by him. For now, the narrator, enjoying the popcorn as the cycle threatens to repeat, and ready to strike again if needed. Remember, revenge is a dish best served anonymously.